Hi there, welcome or welcome back if you're not new to the Haunted Hippie channel. Now, right off the bat, I do need to address something rather controversial, something you might have been wondering about. Yes, the Antichrist, Satan's favorite daughter, can get sick. No, I'm not high today, but that wouldn't be out of character. I'm just sick. And right now, this doesn't really feel that real, so who knows what the hell I'm gonna say today. Usually I'm a little bit more put together, and if you're into the whole bit of like, oh, she's the Antichrist, oh, I want to join her cult, then you can click subscribe. Also click the like button and the notification bell. That way you never miss the next video where hopefully I'm a little more put together. I seriously, I got up and I made my bed this morning and then I just collapsed back into it. But we're here, we're queer, we're talking about Smile 2 up in here. Okay. If there's a quick cut and suddenly my nose is all red, it's probably because I sneezed out a bunch of snot and I had to blow my nose. I don't think there's any way that my makeup is gonna fully stay on my face today. Smile. Let's not talk about my snot. Let's talk about Smile. First, I'm gonna talk about my thoughts and experience with the original movie. I rewatched it right before I went to go see the new one. So there's probably gonna be spoilers for the original Smile right off the bat, but then when I talk about Smile 2, that'll be a spoiler-free section at first. Gonna just talk about everything generally without getting into the plot or anybody's deaths or anything, and then I will get into a spoiler section where I kind of do a plot breakdown, not too much. I usually just like to talk about my favorite plot points or my least favorite plot points, and I like to get a little bit more meaty with the themes in that section, which this movie actually is pretty full of them. My throat. Look, I'm wearing a Nightmare on Elm Street sweater. It's so freaking cute. So cozy. Focus. The original Smile. So I was out visiting my friends in the UK. They are my favorite horror people in the whole world, and I happened to be over there in fall of 2022, so I got to go see the movie with some of my favorite people to watch movies with. My theatrical experience, I think, was as good as it could have been because the original Smile actually really scared me. And when talking about horror movies is your job, that is so hard to find, and it's a little bit embarrassing because for me, it's the jump scares. It's literally the jump scares, it's the tension, and the thing is, I know they're coming. That's like my friend Leanne, like her defense when we walked out of the movie, she's like, well, whenever there's a jump scare, like we've been trained, we know they're coming, so that's why they don't really work. And I'm like, no, but that's why they work, is because I have been trained on it. I know that a jump scare is coming, but I don't know how, when, where, from which side of the screen. And as an anxious person whose brain tends to imagine every worst case scenario outcome, like it works on me. So the original Smile, while I didn't love the movie like by any means, I thought it was like a 3-star experience, it did scare me, and I have one of the top reviews on Letterboxd, embarrassingly, because I don't think it's my best work, but obviously the trauma message from the original movie was like very, very heavy-handed, so I said the real trauma was the trauma that we traumaed along the trauma, obviously a riff on like the real whatever was the friends we made along the way. I didn't think it was that funny, but like 8,000 other people found it hilarious, so great. I didn't have super high hopes going into Smile 2, but like my expectations were definitely raised. I did something I almost never do though, and I watched the trailer, which I wish I hadn't done because it spoils one of the best deaths in the movie. It is part of like the setup, so it's not a massive spoiler like it happens in the first act. I would have preferred to have gone in a little bit more blind, but I did the rare thing of watching the trailer just because I did need a little bit of convincing. I'll watch a trailer when I'm not like super stoked for something, and honestly the trailer had me intrigued. The fact that we're following a pop star I thought was a really unique character to explore this concept with, and the musical numbers looked really good. I love Naomi Scott. I have been a Lemonade Mouth truther since day one. I love that movie so much. I was honestly a little bit more of a Lemonade Mouth girl than I was a High School Musical girl, but obviously I still would put High School Musical 2 above Lemonade Mouth because nothing will ever top that as a Disney original. Anyway, I had a feeling that it was going to be better than the first one, and so I went to the fan event. I went to like the Thursday night preview, but then it was called a fan event. I don't know why, because it was at a similar time to like regular Thursday night previews, but the cool thing they did was I saw it in the Dolby Cinema, and they had this really cool kind of like music video cut together. There was like a 5-minute countdown before the movie started, and you got to see some footage from the characters' music videos and stuff, and the music was actually so good. I'm not really a pop music girly, like Chapel Roan has changed things for me a little bit, but between this and Trap, I'm like, okay, so pop music can be good. Naomi Scott also delivers a little intro, and she's like, thanks for coming to the theater. And I was like, you're fucking British? Is this real right now? Like, I never knew that Naomi Scott was British. So that being said, I don't know why they didn't let her use her natural accent in this movie. She could have been a British pop star. Like, why not? But then I guess like her mom character would need to be British also, and they would have had to, you know, import another Brit. I don't know. And lo and behold, this movie basically met my expectation. It was a bit better than the first one. I think actually on most like technical levels and everything, it was a lot better than the first one. For one thing, the movie has incredible bookends. The opening scene and the closing scene are fantastic, and all of the middle ground is held together by Naomi Scott's performance. I think that Parker Finn can really pick him because Sosie Bacon's performance was also a standout of the first movie. And I kind of feel bad for this woman because I'm just like, you were having to cry and be terrified and be really emotional for the entirety of this shoot. And it's like a 2-hour long movie, and she's in every single scene. Her performance is so utterly undeniable. Like, I don't have enough words for this woman. Sometimes she's almost a little bit too controlled with her performance, and this is still like a compliment. They just utilize this multiple times to the point where I like noticed it. But she's so good at crying while she acts that she can control her tears and make them fall out of only one of her eyes. She'll like have the frightened face on, and then like the single tear, like 1 or 2 tears will fall out of just one eye. That's crazy. She made it look so easy. So no matter what was going on, no matter how outlandish, no matter if I'm like questioning the character's decisions or something, she kept me fully grounded. Like, I was almost never taken out of the movie because I just felt really connected to her. The times that I was taken out of this movie, I actually need to tell you about the time that I got a concussion, because this movie is so egregiously sponsored by Voss, and who wins? Voss wins, and the rest of us lose because mama, oh my god, we get it, you are sponsored. It was to the point where they integrated Voss water into the character of Sky Riley. And concussion, what does that have to do with this? Let me tell you. When I was a freshman in college, I made this big group of friends right off the bat, and I went to a private school, so a lot of the kids there had been very sheltered up until their college career. So a bunch of us are drinking, and prior to college, I had lived in a college town that was a total party town. So I was a little bit more seasoned than my peers from my high school days, okay? There was this one guy, let's call him Ryan. Now, Ryan gets shit-faced because he doesn't know how to drink, okay? And we are just chilling. I am minding my business. I am sitting on the floor for some reason. I think, you know, because, you know, we're in college, like the apartments are tiny. Everyone else is on the couch. I am just sitting on the floor minding my business. When Ryan comes barreling around the corner, like he can't really walk, he fully just barrels into their mini fridge, as college students have, and there was a giant bottle of Voss water on the top of it. And you already know where the story is going, so yeah, it fell off and clunk bonked me over the noggin. And at first I just was like, wow, my head really hurts, but you know, we'll see how I feel. Like, I had never had a concussion before. But then sure enough, the next morning I woke up and all the lights were a little bit too bright, and I felt like permanently tipsy. It was so weird. So I go to the athletic trainer, and yeah, I had a concussion. So me and Voss have like a little bit of beef, so maybe I'm a little bit biased in how annoyed I was at the sponsorship. But also, if you're curious why my review for Smile 2 was Go Piss Girl, that was why, because Naomi Scott is constantly just downing Voss water in this movie. It's weird. I don't like product placement like that. It never doesn't feel forced, but they win because guess who's talking about it? Guess who fell right into their trap? Like I said, though, that was the only thing that really took me out of the movie, because I was very gripped by the character study of Sky Riley, the pop star. Finn really seems to want to explore broken people, and I like that it was changed up quite a bit from the first movie. He explored very different dynamics, where the first one was all about kind of like familial trauma and parental trauma. I mean, there's some of that going on in Smile 2, where it was giving Britney Spears a little bit, But in Smile 2 is more an exploration of someone that was just fundamentally broken on the inside. Someone that dealt with addiction and self-image issues and things like that, which I find interesting to a point. I did feel like the runtime on this one was a little long, and it's the same thing with the first movie too. But I think it's because Finn really likes to take his time. Like, he definitely has his own stamp with his direction. He carried over the same kind of style from the first movie, where between scenes there are a lot of very like contemplative beats, shots that linger of the character just sitting there thinking, the character sitting there, you know, just being trapped in their own head. There are a lot of really cool transitions as well. There's one that was particularly memorable to me where the character is in the elevator and then the doors open to an overhead shot of the street and then her like getting into a car. Really, really cool direction, stuff that you can tell definitely had a lot of forethought. Another thing that I really appreciated, because lately we've seen a real resurgence of the split diopter shot, and that's great. But one thing I said so recently, I don't know if it was on a live stream, but I said that I love the fact that split diopters are coming back, but where are the quick zooms from the 70s? Like, give me that kind of horror camera work back. I want that to come back too. And we got a couple of those in Smile 2. Some of the horror was also pumped up from the original movie as well. Still some jump scares, and a couple of them really got to me. I jumped out of my seat, I want to say like twice. A couple moments with really great tension where I felt really sympathetic to Sky Riley, even empathetic. I was like, ooh girl, I've kind of been through something similar. Her dealing with like the parasocial relationship with her fans and people just like getting too comfortable with her. There are a couple sequences where I thought they got a lot more imaginative with this entity, or whatever you want to call it, you know, the smile demon. I thought it was much more imaginative than the first, and so I thought that they were building up to something really spectacular for the ending, because this is a spoiler for the first movie, but the ending of the first movie is such a spectacle. It is such a fantastic reveal, the different kind of forms that this monstrous creature takes. They do kind of switch things up with Smile 2, but a lot of the movie did feel a bit rinse and repeat. Now, I will talk more about the things that they switched up and the things I enjoyed in the spoiler section, but staying away from spoilers, the only thing that I can say is that broadly, it felt a little rinse and repeat. Just, again, done a little bit better than the first movie. So I do recommend going out to see Smile 2. It was a really fun theater experience. I don't think it would have nearly the same effect at home. Being in the Dolby Cinema especially, it really kind of felt like being at a concert during those moments, and the sound design is very involved, you know, and you feel it in your seat. It's a fun one. If you've already gotten out to see Terrifier 3, then go see Smile 2. But now I do think that I am going to move on to spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, don't worry about it. I will be sitting right here waiting for you when you get back. Okay, so I have a few scenes in the running for my favorite of the entire movie, but one of them is the opening with Kyle Gallner. I thought it was such a phenomenal misdirect. The fact that he fights tooth and nail to get out of this house, and like, that whole scene almost is done in a oneer, and if not, then my god, like, you fooled me. I thought that that was filmmaking on just like a brilliantly technical level, but the misdirect of him going through all of that, busting out of a window, slipping on the ice, still managing to run away and not be hit by a single bullet, and then getting hit by the car, that's just horror done right. And then the slow pull out to reveal his gore in the shape of a smile, you know, that is one complaint though that I had about this movie. There was a lot of CGI blood, and I understand that a movie with so much blood and all this violence and stuff, like, that is the easier route to go. I just think it's a little bit unfortunate timing that this movie came out the week after Terrifier 3, where we see purely practical effects and some of the best effects ever done. So to then see this movie where there's so much CGI blood, it just becomes so much more obvious. The CGI blood is nowhere near as bad as it was in like the early 2000s, and the super egregious, like, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street remake, for example. Hey, Kyle Gallner through line there. But, you know, maybe I should have mentioned that in the spoiler-free section, but whatever. It wasn't super egregious in that opening scene. I thought it was fairly convincing there, so whatever. Then, of course, we meet Sky Riley, and I loved that choreography in the scene where she's, like, dancing and she hurts her back, you know? Whoever choreographed the numbers for this movie, I applaud you. But at that moment we don't understand really what a mess Sky Riley actually is. That's not something that we'll get familiar with until quite a bit later. Pretty shortly after that, when she goes to pick up more Vicodin from her drug dealer, like, we do learn more that she had this traumatic accident, etc. But we still don't quite know what a mess she is. I like how that was kind of unraveled throughout the movie. It was kind of slow and deliberate. And speaking of that scene in the apartment, that is also one of my favorite scenes. I thought the first act of this movie was so strong. Lucas Gage has... No, I can't call it my favorite performance in the movie. I can't do that because Naomi Scott was just too good. I mean, she carried the whole thing. But Lucas Gage was hilarious. He's so talented. This movie did the thing that a lot of mainstream horror does, where they interject almost like Marvel-style jokes, really broad comedy that can appeal to anybody. Ironically, though, that kind of comedy does not usually appeal to me. I feel like it's a little bit try-hard. His moments of comedy were honestly the only ones that like truly hit for me. It felt very organic, and I thought that he was so good. And that's why it bummed me out that his death was spoiled in the trailer, and why we only got that one scene with him. I could have done with so much more of that character, I'm telling you. Then naturally she starts experiencing all of the smile stuff, and I thought that the moment with her weird stalker fan was one of the most powerful. They also kind of expanded on the capabilities of the smile demon and just how much it can manipulate your mind and what you're seeing, with the trail of clothing that she finds in her apartment, and then he's standing there nude. That was a lot. Like, that would deeply unsettled me, actually. I cannot tell you how many weird men just get way too comfortable with me when I give them like an ounce of attention on this channel. So I feel like that kind of encapsulated the fear of almost any public facing woman. I'm sure there's gonna be like 100,000 female content creators that watch that movie, and they're gonna go, oh yeah, there's one of my deepest fears. Anyway, that scene also then ties into us meeting the character of Gemma. Well, meeting the character of Gemma, which, I'll be honest, I did not see the twist coming that was the smile demon the entire time, but I was very skeptical of this friend. And with that, let us get into the arc of the toxic friendship in this movie. So often we're always exploring like toxic romantic relationships. I don't think that cinema has done enough to explore toxic friendships. And this hit very close to home for me because as far as I know, I have not been the Sky Riley, but I have been the Gemma. I have been on the receiving end of the friend that thinks they can use you as like their personal 911 center. Literally, when she holds up her phone and you see her texting 911, I felt that in my soul. That 911 text was something very personal to me. So I was really skeptical of this friend that had come around after we learned that they hadn't talked to each other in like a year. I was like, why does Gemma keep Sky around? Especially, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but when they're in the car together and Sky is like, I want you to pull over, like I don't want you to be involved in this, and Gemma is like, come on man, like you're my ride or die. And I'm like, ooh, Gemma, you're gonna get hurt. Like, you really, you could do better. Like, Sky is right in this situation. And then of course she was the demon, and I was like, yes, that makes much more sense. I thought that was done really effectively. That's kind of why that was my favorite through line of the whole plot. The thing is, you can only do so much for your friends, and if you constantly make yourself available, you're gonna reach a breaking point, like Gemma obviously did. And the craziest thing is, I actually have experience with this. You will go through emotional whiplash with that person, and then the moment that you try to set a boundary, you become the villain. So like her old text that we saw where, what did she say? She was like, you cunt, or I don't know, something. I was like, oh, I'm sure. This movie was very unflinching in having a main character that was pretty much a piece of shit, just an irresponsible energy vampire. And I think it also was a good exploration of how abused people tend to continue the cycle, because we can kind of assume this backstory. I don't think it's something that we learn, but I think we can kind of assume that it is a Britney Spears-ish ish situation with her and her mom, where I'm sure that she has been exploited for years on end, probably starting when she was a minor, by her mom, who just constantly needed more and more and more from her and was just draining her, you know, both emotionally, obviously, which they explore, and then also financially. And it just is such good timing that I happened to also finish Britney Spears' memoir last night. Everything just really aligned for me watching this movie. I feel like they should cut Britney a percentage though, because I feel like her life definitely had to have inspired Smile too. But anyway, those people that grow up in households of like narcissists or just abusive people in general, they are used to that chaos and that drama, and then that's what they're comfortable with, and then that ends up being like what they seek out in not only their romantic relationships but also their friendships. Those are just the relationships that they tend to keep. And so I thought that subtextually they did so well exploring this with her friendship with Gemma, where obviously she just needed more and more and more support and stability from Gemma, which obviously you cannot find in a friend. You have to find that within yourself, until Gemma obviously reached her breaking point. And then of course to Sky, like, Gemma becomes the villain and she starts spewing vitriol at her. I feel like with friendships it's so much harder to kind of draw those lines and boundaries, because generally there just tends to be a little bit more of like an intrinsic obligation to family and to a romantic partner, which is why I think toxic people are really good at exploiting their friendships, because I think that those boundaries are a little bit more blurred. A good friend will understand when you need those boundaries. A good friend will recognize the instability within themselves and like seek professional help, find a healthier outlet, you know, start hitting the gym twice as hard, whatever, rather than spewing all their problems at you without a willingness to like fix the deep cracks within themselves. This movie hit really hard for me in that respect, just because I struggle to think of at least a horror movie that has captured that so well. So maybe for some people that don't really have this kind of experience with a friendship going sour, maybe it was kind of a big reveal when we finally see the full scene of the accident and we learn that she was the one that caused it, when we see her kind of toxic relationship and how she picks the fights and how she seems to be the toxic one. I mean, he was terrible too, but like, you know, maybe it was kind of a reveal that she had brought on so much of her own suffering. But I was picking up all those context clues throughout. I'm sure a lot of you guys did too, but let me know. It wasn't really a reveal to me. That was kind of like the inevitable backstory. Still worked really well though, because in the end, finally, Sky is also kind of realizing that. So her final battle with the demon is with herself. And even though it's like really heavy-handed at that point and they're like laying it on really thick, like you can never get away from the, you know, what's inside of you, the version of yourself inside or whatever. It's really heavy-handed, but because of Naomi Scott's performance and the revelation of that character, I was really into it. I thought that that was kind of like a satisfying conclusion to her character arc, because also by the end, you know, she finally wanted to be better, but it was too late. And I think that that does often happen for people because, you know, like I've alluded to, I have an experience with a toxic friendship like that. You get to a point where you have to draw the line, and you just, even though you love this person and you understand that they are acting from a place of like instability and insecurity within themselves, you just can't like take the abuse anymore. Like you have to draw the line at some point. And so even if that person wants to try to get better and they're in a healing spot and, you know, maybe they'll want to come back for forgiveness, it's a door that shuts. Like sometimes it is too little too late, and this movie said that. The more I talk about the movie, the more I like it. I don't know. I don't know. The third act was a little weak to me. I don't enjoy how many cop-outs there are with the storytelling. The whole character of Morris, I just kind of feel like I could have done without. The ending with him was really confusing. I just don't appreciate the cop-out of, well, it was all in her head. Or this part, you know, if that doesn't make sense, well, that was happening in her head. I don't really enjoy that kind of like wishy-washy feeling to storytelling where things can just kind of be tossed away like that. So the Morris of it all, I didn't really like that about the ending. And then I also did not love the look of the demon this time around, whereas in the first movie, I thought that both the reveals when it was like the giant gross looking person and then also the several jawed big creature, like I thought those were both excellent reveals in the first movie. In the second movie, I thought that it looked a little dumb. Like initially Definitely those crazy eyes when we cut to it, that was a little bit of a jump scare. Like, I wasn't totally ready for that look, but it wasn't great. Like, it wasn't great. And though I do think conceptually it's cool to see the creature coming out of Sky's body and stuff, the CGI was like really egregious, which sucks because that was like a big practical puppet they used in the first movie. So I was like, why would you go to, I mean, you're sponsored by Voss. Make it a real spectacle. Like, go back to the practical effects. I thought that was weird. But then, of course, the movie ends on like a very strong note with her killing herself in front of the entire audience. I love that because now we don't have to worry so much about the continuity with like, oh, she only passed it on to a single character. Now it's passed on to everybody in the audience, which is nuts. I'm all here for it if the Smile franchise is one that is exploring different kind of like mental health issues, different kinds of toxic relationships. I enjoy that it is so far a franchise kind of character studies. It was a little heavy-handed and pretty unoriginal in the first movie. I really enjoyed the character a lot more in the second movie and what they explored. Hopefully maybe the next movie will be a little bit more contained, so there's a little bit less of the second guessing what's real. I get that that's part of the whole point of the demon, and I get that that's part of being within the perspective of our lead character, but sometimes it's just a little bit too much to the point where it feels like overkill, and I just don't want to be questioning literally every single thing that happens. Like, I want to be at least a little bit grounded. This one was just like a bit too over the top, and then the mom pops back up and is alive, and it's like, okay, well, I don't know, does that bother you? Is that just me? Like, let me know. Let's talk about it in the comments section, because I am curious if I'm kind of nitpicking on that, but it is something that I genuinely just like don't enjoy. Because usually the most fun thing about twists like that is upon the rewatch and kind of picking up on all of the clues and everything. Like the movie The Uninvited, even though it's kind of like trash cinema, I love it. That is like delicious garbage to me. The fun thing about a movie having like one rather grounded twist is that the second viewing is recontextualized and it has different flavors. Why am I talking about my taste buds so much? With a movie like Smile 2, I think upon a second viewing, it would still kind of seem messy, if that makes sense. So anyway, I think that wraps up all my thoughts on Smile 2. I would say that I was pleasantly surprised, but I knew that Naomi Scott was gonna absolutely crush it, and it basically met my expectations. So did it meet your expectations? Let's continue the conversation down below. Like I said, if you want more content from me when I'm a little bit more on my game, then check out my past content. You know, I've recently had reviews of Terrifier 3, The Substance, Alien Romulus. I also do deep dives on this channel of horror movies, horror directors, horror franchises. I have a second channel where I talk about physical media and also where I vlog my spooky outings. And if you want even more bonus content, more bonus reviews, I have a Patreon and you get a bonus video there every single week depending on which tier you join. The rest of my social media is also linked down below. I would highly recommend following me on Instagram because that's where I keep you posted on my own personal filmmaking career. I just had my most recent short horror film debut at the Happy Fright Film Festival, so I kind of have taken you on that journey with me a little bit. I should have a vlog of that coming to Patreon in the coming weeks as well, so stay up to date on all the good stuff, you know? But more than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye!